Nature of Predators, Book 2, Chapter 87. Memory transcription subject Taylor Trench, human colonist. Date standardized human time, February 14th, 2161. Gress's belief that the Krev Consortium was that insidious hadn't quite landed with me after witnessing the depths of evil within the Federation. Learning how even the herbivores were subdued and tampered with from the civ kit that we found on Tellus had made us shady surveillance and false flag operations seem tame by comparison. I could almost overlook it altogether, since they'd afforded me happiness and come to the rescue with Ark Ship 3's plight, despite our predatory appearance. They were the first aliens that hadn't hated or tried to kill us. In fact, quite the opposite. It was why I so readily forgave the Krev tendency to fawn over every little thing we did, since it was so innocuous by comparison. Deep down, the attention was kind of nice after a lifetime of neglect and loneliness. I was almost touched to starve enough that I would have let them pet me, but my last shreds of dignity went out. I believed in their goal of hiding from the Federation, but here they were, in fossil extremist records, plain as day. What had angered me was seeing how they destroyed my boyfriend's life, using him as their fall guy to take him out of the picture. I understood why they'd sowed mistrust and outright paranoia. From the way Gress was looking at the screen, he thought that his vision of events was about to be proven correct. Whatever the unearth in these files, it's evident that Tellus and my unwitting parties in consortium space need to know about this. If Gress is right about this being a smoking gun of some deep-rooted corruption, then maybe I won't have to find a different liaison than Radai. That peace deal could be torn to shreds. You think the consortium worked with the ghost fossil, I said to Gress, as the SC delegation perused the files to choose what to open first. That's quite the leap. Maybe they were influenced unwittingly, but they wouldn't help kill predators. They certainly wouldn't leave the colony of human squatters alive. Les laughed bitterly. Taylor, stop trying to convince yourself. It was all just a game. I can see it. The saving grace is that the fossil everywhere keeps such meticulous records of their damned schemes. Whatever they got up to, it'll be right there. These delegates look at me like I know, and I do. I told them there was no Federation, just an eye in the sky. This isn't helping. I know it's been stressful for you to find out everything the consortium did was pointless, but you're losing your grip. We can deal with this together. I'm sure there's an explanation for all of it, and we don't have to go straight to the worst-case scenario. Shit, this could be new data from what the remnants heard through the grapevine. The Casey was helping us in the war against the Fed. They have to pretend to. That's their threat, which supposedly they want to eliminate. Everywhere it's war and truth, altering the sky's fabric to fit your narrative, and chasing ghosts for eternity. It'll be for an eternity soon. Oh, you're right that there's an explanation. I'm not crazy. You'll see. The ghosts of the Federation. I mean, we're literally calling them Ghost Fossil. You don't need to... Never mind. I shoved my hands deep in my pockets, biting my tongue. I don't want Gress to have a fit, and the guards to escort him from the building. Yeah, okay, I'll see you soon. The Krev looked eager to be vindicated, as Secretary General Asmani pulled up the first chronological file from the archives. The data was decoded into human script in no time, and the header on the top painted a telling picture of where it came from. It was acquired on Tinzas, which I read as Tellus. The ghost fossil had been on our home, but when? Surely not while we were there. Coming through the Civkit bunkers that Mafani somehow knew about. If the Underscales knew about them all along, and so did the extremists, then it begged the question about whether those threads were connected. A fossil archivist appeared on screen, eyes gleaming as she gave the intro. We located a Civkit probe, launched as part of what seems to be a 1,000-year recovery plan. An escaped predator disease patient from the Civkit Grand Herd had nearly reached it, but we were able to intercept it. Mind you, brutes are validated forthwith, Loxel yelled in triumph, as if he wasn't up Schitt's Creek for withholding information about the ghost fossil. This kernel of our erudition, bequeathed by Civkit's bygone tenebrous fossil snatched from my claws. Whoa! Naltor scoffed at the dramatic ambassador. Can we hear the rest of this? Not can, yes you may. The fossil elaborated on why the Civkit probe was important to a cause. We long since had the idea of expanding our operations back towards Tinsas and the parts of space beyond where our ideology reached, starting anew. There's too much risk of us being discovered by the blighted humans ever since the fall of the Federation." "Humans?" I echoed. "That means it's after we won the war. This is the first file they have on the Krev. Their influence can't run too deep." Gress's shoulders shrugged. "What? You wanted your government to be secret pawns of the fossil," Culler squawked. "I had almost forgotten the Crocodile Peacekeeper was accompanying us. It sounds like you got ideas to go meddle with Krev space and found out enough about you to rethink. You sure this shit can't be converted to Feddies? Let's see." The archivist continued speaking in mundane, bored tone. "We believe the Sifkits had some initiative to preserve data for future generations, while the human predators have returned many species to their unspeakable starting places, and regressed them from even further than that, in some cases. We had an opportunity to prevent our brethren's work from being undone with the Sifkits." "Those poor bastards," I muttered. "The Federation did them so dirty, and the Tellers shot them away from their homeworld when they finally found it. I'm glad that you're moving back in." "Slowing the Terrans' work is our primary goal, which meant that we had to investigate the Sifkit knowledge repositories. The probe contained some data on their explorative activities into neighboring systems after first contact, which is crucial insight for a region that we might wish to base ourselves in. This was the first instance we found the Krev. To whomever may be listening, this is Chapter 4 of Sifkit History and Achievements. The holographic figure of General Axel, who narrated the Federation's imperialistic conquest back in the bunker, replaced with the archivist's introduction. I narrowed my eyes, wondering what he could possibly know about the Krev. After receiving faster-than-light travel technology from Federation visitors, we set about to explore neighboring systems and search for potential colony sites. A mere 2 hours of travel away, the Sifkits stumbled upon a medieval species called the Krev. Gress blinked in surprise. "The Sifkits knew about us thousands of years ago. Why didn't the Federation find us, or did they?" The Sifkit grandfather studied their planet Evor. The Krev were dominated by a Prevan empire, who came to rule over the peers as protectors. Curiously, they invented fictional monsters and convinced the world that they alone could slay them. A fascinating and imaginative species, much unlike the perfect herbivores I know we're being fashioned into. We Sifkits realized, as our last act of defiance, that we couldn't let the Federation find them. The Krev deserved a chance to develop without their helping paw. I remembered Axel as someone who saw the tide of Federation tyranny coming. However, I hadn't expected that they'd known about their green-scaled neighbors when they were far less sophisticated, and had taken a proverbial bullet for them. No species deserved to have the peaceful prey dogma enforced on them, to become a watered-down, cowardly version. Evor, as I knew it, the planet that had finally offered aliens a true personality and constitution, wouldn't exist as anything more than another Vendel Prime. I liked Governor Lacer plenty, but the fate of the Skullgons was one worse than death. I felt sorry for the Sifkits as is. But hot damn, they protected Gress and his entire society, with the ghost fossil only finding them once they had a chance to fight back. For that, I have immeasurable gratitude, and I imagine he feels that even more strongly. I can't fathom the idea of him cowering at the sight of humans. "Wow, that wasn't what I expected to hear. The Sifkits tried to save you from enduring what they went through," I breathed, wrapping an arm around Gress's shoulders. The Krev's eyes were watery with shock. "And we shot at them without the Sifkits. We would have been as deadened and weak as any of the herbivores. I shudder to think what our society would be, and how we'd feel about humans. I had this very wrong, Taylor. The consortium must know of their sacrifice. It would give them a good reason to be more welcoming and altruistic when the Sifkits make it back to Tinsas." "Be glad they didn't find you. You could have led an extermination fleet instead of us," Carla trolled, with a hint of vitriol. "You wouldn't have found the primates so cute." "That's not true. It's my blood to look at those pinchy cheeks and melt." "Oh, don't start," I growled. "Listen to the floppy-eared imperialist." The fossil had reappeared on the screen as Axel's notes ended. "After we learned about this Krev species detected long ago, our mission was clear. We had to investigate Evor and assess how open they'd be to conversion, and find any other hidden Sifkit data. The latter could give us quite insight, so we headed for Tinsas, and that's when we met the Krev ourselves, as the rest of the files would expand upon." "Wait, what?" Those extremist fossils visited Tellus, and they didn't say anything. Surely I'm interpreting that wrong. Maybe they shot at them and went undetected. Carla's beak parted with suspicion. I don't think so, Taylor. The fossil lived to report back. They said they met, and there's no way that the Krev wouldn't recognize their species. Something tells me this is going to be good. Good for who? Gress spat. Governor Lacey flicked an ear from the audience, shooting a sidelong glance back in our direction. Secretary General Osmani, I think we need to see that next file. I quite agree. If the consortium knew about the ghost fossil all along and conveniently couldn't point out their location on a star map, to me it sounds like both parties entered some kind of talks. Earth's leader responded, eyebrows knitted together. I shook my head, turning to my companions. We assumed wrongly about the consortium with the first file, and found out instead that the certificate stopped them from being victims. Let's not jump to conclusions. I'm trying not to make a rash and impulsive judgment these days. I don't see what the fossil would have to offer the consortium. Gress's eyes hardened. The truth, and the way out. A fictitious monster is as good as a real one, just like it was 1,000 years ago. The United Nations technicians worked to pull up the next file in our newly recovered data from the extremists' archives, as I hung on the edge of my seat to learn what transpired to our initial encounter. The Archhumans had been confronted by the Krev military, presumably a few years prior to this interaction. I still remembered how that had transpired. Any number of things could be possible. We had been able to conceal our identities, which the fossil might have done just in case the certificates tipped them off. Also with us, the consortium had played nice, out of both sympathy for our lives, a desire to avoid open warfare with the Federation, and the hopes of not attracting attention as anything more than a run-of-the-mill herbivores. There was no knowledge of the conspiracy's elimination, or the fact that the ghost fossil were a rogue sect. The scaly mammals might have played along as 100% gentle herd animals to dodge tampering plans. The Krev's motivations didn't need to be nefarious just because the underscales played dirty. Human Black Ops played dirty. Still, why had the consortium never mentioned any of this, especially when we asked him about the ghost fossil? I coiled my fingers around Gress's claws and waited for the definitive answer on whether the KC Peace Treaty could be trusted. Soon enough, the documentation would be clarify which of us were right about the Krev's intent, and the Sapien Coalition would have to decide what to do with this new information. End of chapter. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.